Okay, let's take a quick look at the French and Indian War, also known as the 7 Years' War. And really, before you even understand this war, you have to understand the geography of North America prior to 1754. Real quickly, France controls all of French Canada, as well as the Mississippi River down to New Orleans. England controls the 13 colonies along the Atlantic coast. The biggest cause of the war is this right here. It's the Ohio River Valley. A lot of French settlers and trappers are moving into this area down south from French Canada, and then a lot of English settlers are moving west from the English colonies into this area. It's very rich, fertile land for farming, hunting. Number one cause of the war. The next one is trade around the world. France and England are on a collision course from the Americas to Asia. They all want to control these new lands, and there's lots of riches in them. It's only a matter of time before they fight over them in North America. And then the next one is, there's a religious component. It's not as big as the other two, but France has always been a Catholic country, England a Protestant country, and that's a rivalry that goes back hundreds of years prior to the French and Indian War. Three major conflicts in the French and Indian War, and before we get into those, you have to understand the Native American alliances during this war. Overwhelmingly, they side with the French because the French were seen as more friendly and they worked better with the Native Americans. English tended to take over land of the Native Americans, not treat them as nicely. However, the English do get a big ally in the Iroquois Confederacy. Beyond that, most Native Americans side with the French. Big conflict that kind of started it all was in 1754. A young George Washington goes into the Ohio River Valley. He leads an English delegation in to claim it for England. However, he has to retreat after upsetting the French, builds a small fort, calls it Fort Necessity, fends off the French for a while, and eventually has to surrender. Another big conflict of note is the siege of Fort William Henry in the Ohio River Valley. And that is a big British fort that gets surrounded by the French and their Native American allies, and the British are forced to surrender. As they are marching back, they are attacked by Mohawk Native Americans allied with the French and slaughtered all of them. 1759, in a battle still studied by military historians today, is the Battle of the Plains of Abraham. General Wolfe, a British general, sails up the St. Lawrence River and marches up the cliffs of the Plains of Abraham at night, right outside of Quebec City, and surprises the French and defeats them there. The French are never able to recover after losing one of their most important cities in Quebec, and will eventually have to surrender the war. The war ends in 1763. The Treaty of Paris is signed. And the major effects of the war are, well, the French now are out of North America. And as just a sign of respect, the British do let anyone speaking French in French Canada, now controlled by the British, they let them to keep speaking French, hence a lot of French speakers in Canada today. Also, the Native Americans are really going to suffer as a result. The British are upset that a lot of Native Americans didn't side with them in the battle. They will treat them pretty harshly after this. The big result for England, England now controls all of North America, the Mississippi River. To the victor, the spoils. They get everything that North America now has to offer. One of the big effects of the French and Indian War is the amount of money that the British spend fighting this war. Well, they need to somehow recoup their losses financially, and so what do they decide to do? They start imposing a number of taxes on the American colonists. This never sits well with the American colonists, and they will eventually, 13 years later, because of these taxes, and we're familiar with the term no taxation without representation, they will eventually declare their independence from England. Very kind of roundabout connection, but the Declaration of Independence that we see right here is almost a result of the French and Indian War and all the taxes that the English levy against the colonists after this war. There's also another provision that comes out of the war. It's the Proclamation of 1763, and the British say you cannot settle any land west of the Appalachian Mountains. This also is a big reason that the colonists dislike the British. They say, look at here the French were trying to keep us out of this Ohio River Valley and this land west of the Appalachians. Now the English want to keep us out. That'll upset the colonists. That is a brief history of the French and Indian War.